All right, so let's get going. So this is my About Me slide. My name is Anthony Crain. I work for Blue Agility, but this is my background here, 5 years at Motorola, focused on development and methodology. There I got exposed to the SEI CMM. How many of you guys have heard of that? Only 2, 3, wow, okay, cool. 4, okay. Military Standard 2167A, anybody? Nobody, one person sorta, okay. Waterfall. Oh, now if you're not raising your hand now, you just don't want to play my reindeer games. I feel like this mic is a little too hot. And then the spiral model, how about that? 1, 2, 3, 4, okay. Thank you, you're a lifesaver. And then went to IBM for 16 years and did RUP. Okay, there we go. Wow, about half the room, that's exciting. Agile, obviously. ASM, which includes DAD and ANS. So a lot of people have heard of DAD. How many here? I know you have. Just one person, DAD? Okay, Discipline Agile Delivery. What they don't know is that that's actually part of a bigger thing. So that's kind of fun to point out. And then I got into metrics and portfolio management. Portfolio management is all about how do we make sure that we allocate our resources to the most profitable projects. So it's all those resource allocation problems people say they have. Like Agile says you're supposed to have dedicated teams, right? You've heard that? And that's always been a big problem with my clients. They just can't seem to make that work. That's because they have poor portfolio management. It has nothing to do with Agile. It has to do with portfolio management, and so you have to repair that in order to get their Agile teams to actually start functioning correctly. That's a topic I did this year to IBM, so that was kind of fun. We will not be talking about that so much here, although SAFe does have a portfolio management layer, and so we'll talk a little bit about how those things intersect. And then I got into SAFe as well at the very tail end of my IBM career. And now I'm at Blue Agility, and they are very focused on SAFe. They're one of the 23 US-based partners to the Scaled Agile Framework, and so that they want me to do SAFe, and I'm like, yeah, I can do that. That's pretty straightforward stuff too. All right? So my goal today is to show you guys what I've learned about SAFe already. SAFe it looks like it might be complicated, and in fact, it can be quite simple to understand it. And my goal always is to make the very complicated things seem super easy. And then once you get the easy stuff down, you can go in there and let it grow into that more complicated flavor, that underlies all of these different techniques. But if I can make it simple to start with, then it becomes achievable, and then from there you can grow into the complexities. Make sense? So that's kind of where I'm going today. By the way, the people who came early, I talked to a lot of you guys and asked what you were doing here and what your goals were. So that was kind of fun. It sounds like we have the right group of people in here. So someone who hasn't volunteered yet, why are you here today? Okay. Anything specific about SAFe or just me in general?
No.
I'm okay with that.
A lot about SAFe.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Why are you here?
It's really just a general introduction on program management, a couple of different large teams, and trying to understand how SAFe might be able to help us.
Okay. So managing a lot of teams, trying to figure out how SAFe might help them. You guys had a cool story. You said you had 10 teams.
We are looking to scale to 10 teams.
Yeah, all on one product, right? So they got one product, 10 teams. How do you do Agile in a situation like that? Others? Yeah, what do you got?
I'm at a company that currently has just implemented SAFe for
Okay.
the other side of the house, our external sites, and I'm on the internal side and we're going to go.
So it's coming your way. So you're a very motivated listener. I like it. Okay, sounds good. All right, so that's the kind of people who I was hoping I would have in here. So first off, I'm going to teach you a little bit about the background of SAFe, okay? Not a lot. I'm not into big history lessons or anything like that. But I do want to show you, it's not actually that old. SAFe is fairly new, 2012, right? So that's, a lot of times you see 1995, and you're like, since when? How did I just hear about it now? No, you're right on the cutting edge here. They have, however, been releasing steadily every year an improved product. So they have 1.0, 2.0, and today is 3.0. 4.0 is coming, I think, in August, if I remember correctly, August or September or something. So we'll be 4.0. Yeah?
I'm sorry, one quick general question. Is this like a software package that comes?
So SAFe is a methodology, if you will, right? And thank you for asking. SAFe is an agile methodology, and basically what's happened is this. A lot of us have learned how to do SAFe in a scaled environment. I'm a DAD guy, right? So Discipline Agile Delivery, Scott Ambler, he created that model, and it tells you that there are 8 different complexities that a single team could face. And depending on which of those 8 complexities you have, you kind of have to adjust Agile from like what Scrum might tell you to do. So of those 8 complexities, one of those is team size. If your team size is 9 or fewer, you can do Scrum. If your team size is hundreds of people, you got to scale Scrum somehow. So that's one of them. There's others. There's domain complexity, which says your requirements are much more complicated, and so not having them written down at all would be really hard to be successful. Scrum said that you should write your user stories, and at the end of the iteration, what do you do with those stories? Do you know? Do you know what the textbook user story-driven development says to do with the stories at the end of the iteration? No one knows. You throw them away. So according to user story-driven development, at the end of the iteration, you take the stories, you throw them in the trash. And people are like, but where are my historical requirements? And the answer is you don't need those. If you need to fix something in the requirements, you just write a new story for it. Stories are supposed to be disposable. In fact, stories are not really requirements so much as bookmarks of what you're supposed to do in the future, right? A conversation that we're supposed to have, it's a bookmark for a conversation. But when we're done, we just throw those away because they're not detailed enough to actually be real requirements, okay? So if you are in, let's say you're doing software development and the FDA overlooks your software development, they have a rule that says you can't throw requirements away. You have to keep those, okay? So in that case, the basic rules don't apply, and so one of the 8 complexities is called compliance requirements. If you have compliance requirements, you have to adjust, for example, by not throwing away your stories. So there's geographical distribution, right? You're supposed to be co-located if you're on a Scrum team. But DAD says, well, no, you're geographically distributed. How can you still stay agile, yet have teams that are not co-located? So there's lots of different scaling frameworks out there that have been written by people who have had to solve the problem again and again. This particular one here, SAFE, in my opinion, solves 3 of the 8 complexities that DAD looks at. And one of those is team size, okay? Another one is about architectural complexity, okay? And we'll look in there about what it is. And the third one is what they call organizational complexity, which is where portfolio management lies in. When you have a complex organization, now you have to figure out how to staff projects in such a way that you're staffing right people to the right projects, and that all falls under organizational complexity, which also is talked about here. So what's happened with SAFE is Dean Leffingwell, who has published many books on requirements, on project management, he took a look at SAFE just like everyone else did and said, if we're going to scale SAFE for bigger teams with architectural complexity and who have portfolios to manage, how could we refactor your basic agile concepts, things like Scrum, and scale them up to the program and portfolio level? Now, a lot of us have done this. There's a talk right now with Ken. He's talking about it. Tonight's keynote at the end of the whole thing is about scaling agile. So the difference is that these guys have published their model, and you can actually just type in scaledagileFramework.com, and you'll get to this. It's a website, and you can click on any icon we're about to show you. So I'm going to show you some of the high-level stuff, but if you go to the site and just click on stuff, you can actually use anything from that site anytime you want to. Now, of course, they want to make their money just like anyone else, and so you can hire consultants to help you adopt the model. There's training classes, there's certifications, yada, yada, yada. But the model is free for anyone who wants to go up there, and the slides I'm about to show you are public domain, so I can teach these and you can reuse them without having to pay any kind of royalties or anything like that. You just can't adjust them, kind of thing. All right? Thank you for the question. Okay, so SAFE has been around for a few years now, up to version 3.0. This year, 4.0 will come out. But basically, there's 3 major concepts that went into what SAFE was. Number one, it's got to be agile, right? And honestly, Scrum being the most popular flavor of agile at the time, you'll see it's very much in common with what you would do in Scrum. I'm assuming everyone here already knows Scrum. Yeah? That would be a fair assumption. Okay. But then there's something called product development flow. How many people have heard of that? It's a technique from Lean. And so they took the concepts of product development flow. A lot of you guys have heard of WIP, work in progress, and minimizing WIP. A lot of product development flow is about that, is how do you reduce work in progress. My favorite thought, if I was going to take out my one favorite thought from that whole idea, is if you look at your life cycle and wrote down the different steps of your life cycle, and you time, how much time does it take to get in the front and out the back, right? So from someone submits an idea to we developed a software product, and they're using it, okay? So from idea to use, imagine the time lag on that. Then what they say is what you really want to measure isn't just that. You want to measure active time versus waiting time. And what's amazing is how little the active time is. in percentage-wise compared to the waiting time in between the different steps of from idea to in-use software. And once you separate those two things, now you start targeting the waiting times. We keep trying to target how can we develop faster, how can we test faster, but that's a teeny percent of the real problem, which is the waiting time in between everything, and that's the stuff we have to reduce. And Agile's whole idea of collaboration is a direct attack on those waiting times. Okay, so that a lot of that you'll see in the product development flow, and so all that kind of concept stuff went into SAFe as well. And then of course Lean. So I think probably everyone's heard of Lean. Anyone not heard of Lean? Okay. Lean is just, it comes from manufacturing. It's a technique for trying to push through as much stuff as possible. If you have a chain of people, instead of pushing stuff to someone, they pull when they're ready, okay? And by doing that, you limit the amount of work in progress, the amount of things that are half built to the smallest number you can. And you can also level set. These team can do 10 units per day. This team can only do 3 units per day. So how do we okay, put 3 people on this team and only 1 person on that team, and you balance that stuff out. So all kinds of stuff from Lean. And then they brought that into a software thing, and they used that as its own kind of methodology, advice, technique, framework. And then they brought that Lean stuff into SAFe as well. Okay, so those are the 3 major things that you'll see as themes throughout SAFe. I'm not going to get much more into that than that. Okay. In addition, they obviously, Scrum, very popular, very well known, very successful. So they said, let's keep using Scrum. It works great, less filling. These are not my slides, by the way. These come from the Scaled Agile Framework. Lightweight software project management, clear team roles, scrumptious, let's sprint, okay? So Scrum was great. Uh-oh. This is why I deactivate my touchpad normally. I touched my touchpad and everything went crazy. Extreme programming, okay? So most people who say they do Scrum actually do a hybrid of Scrum and XP, and they don't even know it. Why is that? Anybody know what the biggest difference is between Scrum and XP? Scrum deals with the whole team, XP with just developers. XP is for sure more developer focused, I would agree with that. Anything else? Here's the weird thing, and at first you might not even believe me. Scrum is a project management methodology. There is nothing in Scrum about how to do engineering. Requirements, design, code, test, deploy. That's the engineering part. Planning is the part, like if you look at the waterfall, it's planning, requirements, design, code, test, deploy. That's the waterfall. Scrum really only addresses the P. There are no engineering practices. So things like pair programming and story-driven development, those don't come from Scrum. You can use them. XP, on the other hand, has a ton of engineering practices. How to do continuous integration, how to do pair programming, all the stuff about how to actually develop software, that was what's in XP. So when you take Scrum and XP and put them together, you have 2 agile methodologies, and now you have kind of more of a full life cycle. Okay? So most people are already doing Scrum XP, not just Scrum or just XP. So SAFe borrows from both of these guys. And then Kanban. How many people have not heard of Kanban? Everyone's heard of Kanban. What do you know about Kanban? How is that different than Scrum? So what about the sprints? You don't have sprints, yeah. So in most iterative methodologies, there are sprints or iterations, right? And every iteration, you do a demo of your work, you do your retro, and go on. With Kanban, it's just continuous. There is no idea of a sprint, and then you demo on demand, for example, okay? So there's one of the big differences. So clear thinking on flow, demand management, and limiting work in progress. There's that manage demand and flow. So not only are they going to pull from Scrum and extreme programming, but you're going to see in SAFe, they also pull ideas from Kanban. So I showed you these 2 slides just to kind of, for those of you who have some background already. SAFe is pulling from Agile, Project Development Flow, and Lean, and SAFe is pulling from Scrum, extreme programming, and Kanban. So when they created this solution, they created it using all of the best from these things and then laid on their own secret sauce on top of that. All right? Okay. By the way, we talked about product development flow. So here's some of the principles of it and a book and the guy who wrote it. So there's your apply work in progress constraints. Make your batch sizes smaller, right? We heard Alistair talk about that today, where he said if you have 1,000 lines of code, and you have to find 30 bugs. It's a lot easier than if you have 100,000 lines of code and have to find 3,000 bugs, right? It's the same percentage, but it's a lot more code to go through to find the one bug you have to fix. Okay, so all these things here, none of these are super surprising or whatever, but this book tells you some techniques. And then who's doing SAFe today? On the SAFe website, they have a bunch of case studies. So these are all just right off their website, different case studies of people who are using SAFe today in industry. Okay, so while being 3 or 4 years old, they have a whole lot of people claiming success. So if you want to get more into detail on those, they're all available. Okay, so my favorite thing about SAFe is at first terrifying. Okay, when I first saw this, I'm like, holy moly, there's a lot of stuff going on here, right? And so I'm going to walk you through this in a way that makes it super easy, super light, super simple. But before I do, it's still my favorite thing despite its relative complexity lookingness that it has going on here. And here's why. This is everything. And that's the thing. Every single icon on here, you can click on it and get pages of information about it. So in that essence, it reminds me of RUP. In RUP, there was a website and you click on stuff. But in RUP, they had their 9 disciplines. And then underneath there was tons more words and definitions. This is everything in one single picture. So over here I see spikes, refactors, others. How many people have heard of spikes? Okay, most of you. You click on spikes and you will get a page that talks about how do you do spikes in the Scaled Agile Framework. And it turns out that there's 2 kinds of spikes in SAFe, technical spikes and business spikes. And so you can learn about what's a technical spike, what's a business spike, and then take advantage of that. But it's here already on the diagram. So there's nothing else. Everything in SAFe is in fact represented on this diagram. So that's kind of cool. And there's patterns. And I'm going to show you all the patterns in this so that by the time we're done, there won't be anything mysterious on this slide anymore. Okay? That's what my goal is for us for this hour. Cool? All right. No mysteries. How much time do we got? Well, about just under an hour to do it. That should be easy. Okay, so first of all, vocabulary. As I've watched people adopt SAFe, they get very, very hung up on some of the SAFe terminology. And so I figured there's only a few terms that are confusing, all the rest are normal. And if I could collect just those few into one slide, you could use this as your go-to from now on. And that's the purpose of this guy. This is the only stuff in SAFe that's a little unusual. So first of all, they have something called a value stream. Okay? A value stream is basically the same as a product line. Now, are there slight nuances? Yes. Remember, my goal is to keep things simple and then let the complexity grow once you've mastered it. So for now, you can literally just replace it. And yes, know that at some point, a real SAFe expert could argue, well, there are some slight nuances of difference between a product line and a value stream. Yeah, but this will get us started. Okay? So, if we go back to the diagram then, do you see those bluish little chevrons? There's 2 of them up there, a skinny one and a fatter one. Those represent the value streams, okay? And now, and you can see right underneath it, value streams deliver solutions. So in the model, there's something called a value stream. It's a product line. And what I like to do is come up with an example that everyone can understand. For me, the easiest one is Microsoft products. Microsoft products, okay? So what would be a product line, right? A value stream, a product line in Microsoft that you use every day? Microsoft Word, okay? What's another one? Excel, okay? What about the platform itself? What about Windows, right? Microsoft Windows, that could be one too. Now, which one do you think is bigger, Word or Windows, in terms of number of people working on it, number of features trying to be built, the complexity of it? Okay, so looking at those 2 blue blobs, which one is Windows? Okay, so that bottom blue blob might represent a product line, Microsoft Windows, and the one above it, the product line, Microsoft Word. And there could be other ones for their other product lines as well. Get it? So I'm doing this because I want you to understand only the few vocabulary oddities, a value stream. But it makes sense, right? It's a value stream. It's a stream of value that we deliver to our clients. Word is one of those. Office is another. Windows is a third, etc. So I guess there would have been a subset relationship there. Sorry about that. But anyway, you get the idea. So one of the things that you need to do if you're going to adopt SAFe is think about what are our product lines. If your customers are external, that's easier. If your customers are internal, it's okay. You can still figure out what are the main value streams, what are the main product lines that we have for the people that we help. That's just top up here in the blue. Got it? All right. Now, the next big strange vocabulary thing is epic. Now, how many people have heard the word epic before? An epic. Okay, to me, an epic is just a really big story. Okay, and that's been the definition forever. Well, of course, SAFe had to just poo-poo all over that. And so the truth is, in SAFe, an epic is what you used to think of as a project. Okay, so but first, what is a project? How do you define a project in software development? If someone was like, what do you mean by a software development project? What do you got? Okay, it has a distinct beginning and end. What else? It has what's that? It has a budget, right? We have only so much money allocated to that, and we have to manage that budget. So we have to deliver everything the project is asking for, but we're constrained by a budget on that project. And a scope, okay? What else? Okay, and we have to allocate a team to it. There needs to be a manager who manages that project. So what I'm getting at is this. I've been to companies where they say, oh, we have 1,000 projects a year, and their projects are just tasks. They basically have a backlog of requests, and they consider each of those a project. And one person does it by themselves. So that's not what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about a bona fide project with a team of people, a budget, a scope, etc. You with me? Okay, given that definition of project, in SAFe, when they say epic, they're saying project. So when you start off your SAFe journey, you need to figure out what are your product lines, and then what are the different projects or epics that product line has to do. Now, here's the question. Just looking at the first two, could one project span more than one value stream? Think about our Microsoft example, right? Can you imagine that Excel and Word would both have a similar project that they had a piece of, right? For example, all those products are now on the iPhone. That was a single epic, go to the iPhone, but all the value streams were affected by that particular epic. So an epic could, in fact, span value streams. Now, can you imagine that some epics are unique to a value stream? Okay? This only applies to Word. It's a request against Word. It's a project for Word itself only. Okay, so you get both. Coming back to the diagram for a second. At the very top there, you see it says the word Kanban. Okay? There's a blue one and a red one. Now, first of all, in this diagram, anytime you see the red color, that's architecture. So you can see the red Kanban then would be what? What's that? Architecting something, right? It turns out that those are the architectural epics. So you have a Kanban, a funnel, a list of architectural projects, which we call epics in this case, that we need to get done. It's our backlog of architectural projects, okay? And the blue is always business. So we also have a backlog of business projects that we have to get done, and then all that comes together into what they call the portfolio backlog. The portfolio backlog then is what? Based on the diagram, what we just talked about, what would you say the portfolio backlog has?
Priority rank of items from both.
Priority rank of items from both, and those items are called epics. So the portfolio backlog is a priority list of epics, both architectural epics and business epics. And by the way, an epic is really a project. Yeah? Yes, but we're talking projects now, right? So what is an architectural project, right? It's something big, like the whole organization needs to be moved off of Windows and onto Macs. We're making the move, right? That would be an architectural project, right? But it also can be specific to a product line, right? So Word going to the iPhone could be considered an architectural project because there's no new functionality. We just need to get it on the iPhone, and we're going to have a reduced set of functionality to begin with, but it's going to be a subset of what already exists. So that could conceivably be an architectural project, right? But a business project would be, one thing that Excel doesn't do, I call it fluttering. Fluttering I do a lot of PowerPoint presentations. Fluttering would be you put together a little table of contents, and then you say flutter, and it duplicates that table of contents with a little arrow move down one by one automatically. Then you can put your slides in between. Now, if you change the table of contents on the first one, it automatically changes it on all the other ones instead of me cut and pasting it a million times, right? Which is what's happening today. So that would be a business epic possibly for Excel, or it might be too small to be an epic, in which case then that's fine too. Okay, but basically it's specific to, to PowerPoint in that case. Okay, so business versus architectural. Here's one, a common one is the database that has all of our client records is no longer being supported. We've picked a new database. We have to migrate everything from the old database to the new. Again, no functionality change, nothing that the business is going to be benefiting from, but if we don't do it, we're going to be in trouble. So that could be considered an architectural project or an architectural epic. Okay? So at this point, you should understand just the blue backgrounds and then the red and blue Kanbans and how they come together into a backlog. And why are they Kanbans? We're using work in progress limiters to say what's our capacity for architectural projects, what's our capacity for business projects, and then pulling the most exciting ones forward into the portfolio backlog. Okay? And the word portfolio, that's always been around. IT portfolios have always been a list of our IT projects and which ones we should fund, staff, et cetera. Okay, red, think architecture. I think we covered that already. Train. Okay, so the metaphor, the coolest metaphor in SAFe is this train. They call them agile release trains, ART, and so they call them ARTs a lot. You'll hear people talk about ARTs, an agile release train. So when you hear the word agile release train or ART, what I want you to think is dedicated team. So in portfolio management, there's lots of strategies on how to allocate people to teams. But in Agile, what do they say? You're supposed to have a dedicated team for your Agile team, right? Now, that's hard to do. Well, for these value streams, you're supposed to have dedicated trains. In other words, giant teams that are dedicated to the value stream. And oddly, that's less hard to do. It's hard to dedicate a team to a single project, but it's actually not so hard to dedicate. This is the staff that works on Microsoft Word. This is the staff that works on Microsoft Excel. In fact, some of the problem is we don't get enough crossover, and so we don't benefit from each other's awesome practices. Okay? So when you think train, think dedicated team, just like Agile wants, but at the entire value stream level. Now, going back, oh, by the way, what's the rule of thumb for team size on an Agile team? What is it? Yeah, it's. I think the original rule was 7 plus or minus 2. I actually have had teams as small as 2 where it worked, but once you get over 9, now you're supposed to break it into 2 teams. Okay. So first of all, do you see the trains up there at the very top of the diagram? And what can you tell me about the trains versus the value streams? Do you know which ones the value streams are?
So there are multiple trains to a larger value.
There could be more than one train. In other words, there could be 2 different dedicated teams working on the same value stream. Okay? Doesn't have to be though. So you can have 1 train per value stream, but you could have more than 1 train. But the train is allocated to a value stream because that is a dedicated team for that value stream, just like we have dedicated teams at the Agile team level. Okay? Again, I'm going to get into all this stuff a little bit more in a minute, but I'm just trying to show you some of the interesting stuff, and then we'll get into a more logical way of thinking about things. Okay, then feature. How many people have heard the word feature? How many of you use features in Agile? Ooh, how do you guys use feature in Agile? I've always just used user stories.
Sometimes they interchange feature and epic, but
So a feature is like a big story then.
well, we've tried to get better at it, but so feature would be kind of the remarkable feature set, and then break those into epics, and then break those into.
So you have features that you break into epics and epics that you break into stories, okay? Is that what everybody else would say or what? Okay. Okay, so the biggest thing we have is epics. We break those into the features of the epic. The features are broken into stories. The stories are broken into tasks. So you have this hierarchy. Anybody else? We have a flip-flop here. What else? That covers everybody? For me, an epic was a really big story. We didn't have features at all, and we had projects. So we had projects, epics, stories, and tasks was our hierarchy. So notice that people are doing a lot of hierarchies here. What they've done is come up with one, and now we can all agree, let's just follow this one. It's not like one's better than another. As long as we come up with good definitions, any one of these should work, right? Which would be consistent. So in this case, a feature is a side-of-the-box wow level item, okay? How many people here know about use cases? A couple of you, okay? Think of a feature and a use case, the name of the use case, to be at about the same level in this case, okay? And by the way, people did use cases really wrong. If you had the original rule of thumb for use cases, is that you'd have about 30. Somewhere between 3 and 30 for the entire product. 3 to 30. And yet I'd go in and see models with 300 use cases. And they were obviously very decomposed. They shouldn't have been use cases in the first place. So we're talking at the 3 to 30 mark, okay? So think of a feature as a side-of-the-box wow level item. If your product was literally in a box and you were going to print on the side of the box, you know, it slices, it dices, it juliennes, right? Those are your features. So the big wow level items. And then your stories and tasks will all decompose under those features. Okay? So that's what a feature means. The biggest surprise though is epic, right? That's very different than than either of you guys do. Okay? Stories same as usual, but they're now tied to a feature. Okay? And task is same as usual, a piece of work tied to a story. So there's their hierarchy. And by the way, I'm not going to get into this today, so I'll just say it once now. My favorite technique to find my stories from a feature is I name my feature, my feature set. I take one of them and I write a scenario. I'm like, give me a scenario of someone achieving this feature. And so once they go through that whole scenario, I then look at each step, and each of those steps is a candidate story. So just look at it. Some of them won't be, but most of them will be. And when you're done, you'll have a really good set of stories that achieve that feature. That's a good finite set for version 1 of that feature. So that's my favorite technique for doing it. And by the way, if you were in Alistair's thing today, what did he have? He said you could split your story into 3 pieces, right? Those 3 pieces were the risky part, I can't remember what he called it, learning, and then the middle part was the value, and then there was the tail, okay, learning, value, tail. You could then, after you did this scenario-driven development and tagged all the steps that are actually good stories, and then say, okay, which of these are learning stories, the risky ones? Which of these are the value stories, and which of these are the tail stories? That would be also kind of cool. And I bet a lot of the tail stories would be in your alternate flows if you know your use case speak when you find those stories out of here. So just a little tip there. That's what I like to do. I have a whole deck on how to do what I just said, but we don't have time for that. Okay, so at this point then, I'm hoping that there is nothing on this slide that is now a surprise. I'm hoping that some of this was a surprise. If none of this was a surprise, then I just wasted a whole bunch of time. Right? So was some of this surprising? Okay, do you now get all of these ideas? You are already ahead of some of the safe transformations that I've seen from the outside. They literally don't even have this level understood yet. Okay? Now, are there some nuances? Yes. Is an epic exactly the same as a project? No. One major difference between an epic and a project is that on a project, you have to find staff to allocate to that project, and then you have to schedule its start date and its end date. And if the staff you need is on another project that overruns, your whole thing cascade messes up, right? Your whole portfolio planning. In SAFE, you don't have to allocate a team to a project. Why? It's already dedicated. It's the train. So what you do is you just put it on the queue, and the train, instead of being told when the start and end dates are, what do you think they do? Looking at that limiting work in progress, looking at that whole way Agile works, they just pull from the epic backlog, and they decide when they can start it and stop it and all that. Get it? Yeah. No, Kanban is only used at the top level. When they go below, it's going to be Scrum type stuff much more. Okay? So they only use Kanban at the portfolio level. Awesome observation. All right, and we're going to see that right now when we get into this. So I've given you an overview of just some of the tricky terms. Now I'm ready to start to actually dig in and show you how simple this model really is. You ready? I'm hoping that this really kind of puts it in order for you. That first step was just some vocabulary setting. Now let's really figure it out. So first of all, nothing beats an Agile team, right? I love that it starts with that. So down here, this is the bottom level of that diagram. If you look at that diagram, it is actually split up into 3 major pieces, okay? And they have them labeled on the edge here. There's a team, a program, and a portfolio. And notice that the program and the team share a box. That's because the teams are always part of a program. but there's still a separate way of thinking here and here. So there's a team level of safe, the program level of safe, and the portfolio level of safe. Get that? So that's already the first easiest way to slice it up. So we're going to start by looking at the team level because it's the least different from what you should be used to already. So there it is, the team level. Okay? So they, just like any Agile team, deliver software, empowered, self-organizing, all the stuff that we love about it. They have but there's some differences. Okay? They operate under a program vision. So when I have an Agile team, I've always written my own vision for my team. Instead, the program writes a vision. My team then needs to figure out what is our piece of that vision. And I know that my piece is also, not going to overlap someone else's piece. Okay, so there's some stuff going on. They do Scrum and XP. They deliver value using user stories, so that part's all the same. So here's a diagram, and over here you have your teams, right? There's your developers, testers, hopefully requirements people too. I'm disappointed that's not written there. Your Scrum Master, your product owner. So this, completely normal. They focus on quality, agile architecture, continuous integration, test first. All of your XP practices, anything to do with development, all comes down to this layer as well. Okay, and again, each of these things is clickable. They have their own backlog per team. Okay, and notice there are architectural stories on there as well. There's the red. Okay. Now, you will notice, however, that there are 5 iterations here that are related somehow. Iteration 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And that 5 is some unique special iteration called an IP iteration, or an IP iteration, okay? We'll get into that in a minute. But the point is that these 5 iterations are tied together because that's where our program releases, our program increments are going to be, not releases. We'll talk about that in a second too. So we have what are called program increments, which are bigger, and the default, you're allowed to change anything you want in the model. But in the model, the default is each of these is 2 weeks long, and that the program increment then would be 10 weeks long. Okay? It's all defaulted. You can change it if you think you need to. So when they get to here, they break again, and they have another 5 iterations, 10 weeks, and so on and so forth. They have stories that fit in iterations. They do spikes, refactors, and other. All here, and everything, again, clickable on here. So the only thing that's different from what you're used to is that things are grouped into 5s. And that's flexible, but it's a good starting point if you don't know better. Okay? Any questions on this level? The program vision is written at the program level, so it's not rolled up, it's decomposed down, right? And so then we take our piece of it. And so what's not shown here, oh, here we go, are our team PI objectives. So there are going to be program level objectives, and one of the things that we do is the team say, here are the program objectives, what are our objectives because of that? And that's how we tie that together. Thank you. And it's the only item I skipped by accident on the diagram, thank you. Yeah? Yes, you can have stories from different epics and from different features as well. So I want to show you how they manage that in just a second. Go ahead. So refactors are pretty much the same as what you normally expect, which is according to classic Scrum, we develop the best design we can at the time, but as we then, in the next increment, start to change things, we notice some optimizations that we didn't make because we didn't know we would need them, we should make them now. And so we should always be refactoring our work to make sure that our design emerges and meets hopefully some overlying architecture. A refactor can be its own, yes, a refactor can be its own item. Okay. I've actually been on teams that always do their refactors of stories. That's okay. I like to keep my stories very clear. A story needs to add value. And one of the biggest problems I'm seeing in the teams that are adopting the model is that their stories look like tasks to me. And they don't have any tasks. And that's a problem, right? So now when they tell me a velocity, I'm like, yeah, that velocity is meaningless because what you're giving me is a task velocity because your stories are not valuable. And so this is the thing that I'm trying to help my teams now to fix. Okay? Anything else? We good? All right, so I'm hoping there is nothing on here. Oh, there's also sprinkles. I didn't point that out. Every sprint you're supposed, that's just from standard Scrum though, right? Standard Scrum had sprinkles, so that hasn't changed at all, but they're here. So,
The individual little blocks are stories, correct?
yes, thank you. So these blocks are stories, and they might be business stories or architectural stories. Yeah?
I know you didn't mention releases yet. The set of 5 iterations, they're part of a stable.
They're actually part of what's called a program increment, and a release is different. And I'm going to show you that when we get to the program level. Okay? Stand by. A sprint goal, basically your stories are the details of what you're going to get done. The sprint goal is overall this sprint, what we're looking to do is increase usability. Or overall this, it's the big idea for the iteration. And all the stories are there to help us to achieve that. And the idea being we can achieve the goal even if we didn't do every story. It's a scope management thing as well. Right? So if we had given this goal for the sprint, which story could we leave off the table and still pretty much achieve the goal? Okay? So it's a little more touchy-feely, stories are a little more concrete. At least in my opinion. Okay, anything else? Great, and by the way, if you have not ever downloaded the Scrum guide, it's 16 pages, and it has that definition in there, and it's the number 2 item on my reading list. I have a reading list for all new teams. Number 2 item is the Scrum guide. It's only 16 pages, so it should be read that fast, and it is the heart and soul of what all these other Agile methodologies are trying to do. So, big recommendation on that, and that'll have sprint goals defined for you much better than what I just said. Okay, at this level we have code quality. So you can see agile architecture, continuous integration, test first, refactoring, pair work, collective ownership, all those things, again, no surprises. If you know Scrum, this stuff should not be surprising to you, okay? So you can't scale crappy code. So the point, what they're saying here is we embrace these same things still because we're gonna scale it and you can't scale crappy code. So they're trying to go out of their way to point out, don't stop doing this, okay? Okay, so that's it for the team level. Now we're going to move up to the program level, okay? So self-organizing still. So we still want to be self-organizing. So we're thinking agile team, bigger now. Working system increments every 2 weeks, okay? So while I told you that they have program increments that are 5 of these, they still have system increments that match the teams below, okay? And we'll get to that a little bit deeper in a second. Aligned to a common mission via a single backlog. So there is, in fact, a program backlog. So each team has a team backlog, but the program has a program backlog, okay? And what's on the program backlog? Yes, okay? So the teams have what on their backlog? Stories and possibly spikes and refactors, okay? The program has features. And they have, again, blue and red features, right? Okay? So they're working in features, a bigger chunk, a bigger thing. Now, they have common sprint lengths and estimating, face-to-face release planning, and value-driven delivery via features, okay? So mostly it's the same as what we just saw. The difference is we're doing features instead of stories, and the team is going to be a little bit different. Let's see how. So first off, what is the number one role? There's only, how many roles are there in an Agile team? 3, okay? Name the first one. So it's interesting. I always am curious to hear who says product owner versus Scrum Master. Who is the first and most important role? In my opinion, it's the product owner, right? The product owner is the one who we're doing this. The Scrum Master is the one who makes it actually happen. So if you're a Scrum Master, you probably say Scrum Master. I don't know. I think it's product owner. All right. So, but we need all 3. We need a product owner. We need a Scrum Master. We need a team. So where is the product owner here? They actually have a team called the product management team. This is what takes place with the product owner, okay? What about the Scrum Master? They have one, and it's hidden. I don't know why they make it so small and hidden, but there they are. They call them a release train engineer. I know, kind of weird, kind of funny. You get used to it. Pretty quickly it becomes natural. But when you see RTE or release train engineer, that's your product owner. I'm sorry, that's your Scrum Master, okay? And then everybody else is the team. So we have a system team. What do you think the system team cares about? And by the way, I noticed they broke out DevOps, UX, and the system architect. All these guys are really part of the system team as well, but they're kind of so important they want to show them off. And DevOps is such a sexy term these days. You got to make sure you put that on your slide somewhere, right? But really all these guys belong into the system team. So what does the system team do? They take care of the integration of all the work of the teams. They make sure that they have the architecture they need. There's something called an architecture runway. See this red thing here? Remember, red is always architecture. This is called the architectural runway, and if you click on it, you'll get information on it, but you're basically laying out just enough runway so that the teams can continue to operate safely, just in time architecting that runway, okay? Well, your system team, along with all the rest of these, are making sure that architectural runway is in place for those teams. And at the end of each team iteration, which is two weeks, the system team here will integrate the work across all the teams and do a system level demo that unifies all of the team demos into a single demo. Okay? Yes, you can have people that have a foot in both things, but don't forget that the more dedicated you are, the higher productivity. So you don't want to do that to everyone. But yes, okay? So these are all what I called shared resources, okay? Now, shared resources might also be shared to other trains as well. So the reason they call these out separate is these are shared maybe even across trains, and so they have to be thought of a little bit separately as special as well. So we have program level people like RTE, system architect, UX, DevOps, product management, and the system team that are not necessarily the same as the team level people, okay? So you actually have a unique dedicated team at the program level. Before SAFe ever existed, years before, I started at IBM in '99, and my first client in '99, they had 4 different projects, 4 different teams that were working on projects. And I said, are all 4 of these teams working on the same product? And they said, yes. I go, are they working on the same project even? They're like, absolutely. And I'm like, well, how many teams then are there here that we need to be managing, that we need to understand? And they said, 4. I just said that. And I'm like, it's not 4. 4 is the wrong answer. And so they said, oh, yeah, you mean there's 1 team. Got it, we should manage, yeah, we understand the message. And I'm like, no, that wasn't my message either. My message is that there's 5 teams, and you guys have forgotten to staff the 5th team. The first 4 are the ones doing the work, but the 5th one, you think 1 person can do that, and they call that person a program manager. That program manager needs a team of engineers just like the other 4 teams do. And they're like, well, what would they work on? And I'm like, the vision of the program, the architecture of the program, the integration of the components of the program, the testing at the system level. That team does exactly the same disciplines as the 4 sub-teams, but they do it as a team. And so I've been preaching this message. I wrote a paper on it in '99, okay? This does exactly that. There is now teams, and there is actually program roles as well, much more specifically than my paper. My paper just said make them the same, right? This is a little bit more specific. But the idea is the same. There's program level people and there's team level people. All right? Okay, so we integrate and demo every iteration. We have program increments every 5. Here's another program increment here. But here's the interesting thing. Release on demand. Oh, and they cut it off. This part here, it's on the team slide. I noticed it was there. I didn't realize that it wouldn't be here. Develop on cadence, okay? So we develop on cadence, but we release on demand. And that's one of my favored sayings in this technique. So what does that mean? Each of these yellow lines represents what? These lines here. An iteration of all the teams who are on the same cadence now, right? And then the big fat yellow line is a full increment, which is 5 of those iterations, right? But look at the little box. What do you think this little box represents? Which is also known as delivered code, he said. Release, okay? So each of those boxes is release. And what do you notice about where they are physically positioned? They're wherever. Here's one in between. Here's one right on an increment. Here's one in between. Here's one right on an iteration. Here's one on an increment, okay? So what we're doing is we're programming our train to develop on cadence. Develop. But we release on demand. We release whenever it's right based on the release plan. Does that make sense? So it does not have to align with anything. And where do we decide that? Right here in this roadmap. So there's a roadmap where we lay out what are the releases going to be. And then we make sure that the increment prior to that is the one we're going to put into it, okay? So the roadmap helps us understand the release planning. And that's why an increment and a release are not the same thing. Cool? So why have both? We want to be able to release on demand, but we want to develop on cadence. And by decoupling them, it lets you do exactly that. There's also the vision for the program. We talked about that. And then here are the program epics. It's the epics that we decompose into our features, okay? Now, there is also a release management team that's different from product management. These people sit on this team as well, however. But these are the people who plan the roadmap of releases. Whereas these people decompose epics into features. And these people make sure that the architectural runway is in place and do the integration and the test and all the rest of the stuff. So this is the team. So notice that all our agile roles are still there. Team, product owner, Scrum Master.
Would that roadmap be more features to try to identify, once we have
The-
these 3 program level features, then we're going to release? Is that what
There is a mapping between the features and the releases, yes. And I don't think I have a diagram of that. I have a diagram of the mapping from stories to features, but I don't have the feature to release one. But you can deduce it. I'll show you the slide and you'll see how that lines up. Okay? So I think we've covered most everything in here. I&A, inspect and adapt. What do you think that is? It's your retrospective at the program increment level. Okay? And this is WSJF, I can't possibly read that, but it says weighted shortest job first. This is the prioritization algorithm for the program backlog. Instead of just doing value, they have something called weighted shortest job first, and you can click on that to get a definition. But they basically say, take into account both value and how quick it would be to deliver that value. So if you have a really quick thing that's valuable and a really not quick thing, if you do it in this order, you get your first value way out here and the second one just after. But if you would just reverse them, you get one value super quick, and then you get the next one the same length it would have been had you reversed them. So they're talking about weighted shortest job first. You can get more details, but that's the basic idea. Anything else on here? Release management are the people who plan the releases using the roadmap. The same people who do your release management today. Right, so we're not changing any of that up, right? And if you click on it, it'll give you some better guidance. But basically, it's the same exact team that does release management today for your program. Okay?
Your RTE isn't responsible for your development teams. He's only responsible for the program.
In a way. So he says the RTE is only responsible for this execution, not necessarily for the individual team execution. And that's correct. However, if these teams don't operate, the whole train can fall apart, so he needs to make sure. But we don't want to be command and control. So we want to be high trust, self-organizing, let them make their own decisions, but we want to have touch points so that we get visibility, so you want to have that transparency. And so there's Scrum, you've heard of Scrum of Scrums? The RTE will have the Scrum Masters come together in a Scrum of Scrums to help understand how things are going, okay? So, and that is in the model as well, okay? Anything else on here we haven't talked about? We have our PI objectives. Up top, in the House of Lean, Lean Agile Leaders. There's actually a training course and specific things that we want your leadership to do to prove that they're lean and agile leaders. And so that trains them how to think agile, how to be agile, how to enable agile as leaders. And that's what that little nugget up there is about. Okay, I think we've covered pretty much everything on here. Yeah? Cool. So think about it. All it did was take agile at the team level and made it work at the program level, but we've all done that. It's just they made a picture that's so good, makes it easy to just use theirs. All right, so here's a little thing I put together to try to help you understand the whole deliver on cadence, release on demand, and the whole idea of a train. So here on the bottom, I got a train, and the train can only hold 2 features at a time. There's your teams delivering, they know their velocity, I can do 2 features, right? Again, it really should be stories and all that, but let's simplify for this diagram. So if you want to do feature 3, what happens? Can't do it, out of scope. So you don't worry about it, you let it go. The train shoots along, why? Because the next one comes along. These are representing of the increments, the 2-week, 2-week, 2-week. And now, you can put feature 3 on that train and feature 4 as well. So this whole idea, this whole metaphor of a train is, there's a great video, and maybe if we have time I'll play it for you guys. There's a great video right on the SAFE website where the guy says, when you plan a trip to another country, you have to plan ahead, figure out what airplane you're going to be on, what your dates are, make the reservations. But when you're running around town and you're going to use a train, you don't plan it out, you just go and get a train. Why don't you have to plan it out? Because what? The trains are always running. So if you miss one, you just wait for the next one. And that's the metaphor they're trying to put together with this whole agile release train is look, we're just going to have the train go, and every 2 weeks they're going to do something. So if your feature doesn't get in, relax. The next train's coming. Throw it on there. Okay, so that's the whole deliver on cadence metaphor. Oops. Here's the develop on cadence, release on demand. I kind of just made a little harvested a little drawing here, but I think we understand this one now. We comfortable with this idea? Okay. All right, now release planning is huge. It's awesome. Every 10 weeks, we get all the teams together into one giant room, and we do planning with everyone. So you got 10 teams, all 10 teams are planning at once. I've done these events. An Agile release team, by the way, has between 50 and 150 people. We talked about an Agile team having between 2 and 9. An ART has between 50 and 125, I think is the number on the website. We bring together all the people, and I've done it. It's amazing. The energy is ridiculous. All team members get together. Program level information is communicated. The teams break out. So once the program level stuff's understood, now the teams go into their separate corners or even in separate rooms, and they start doing their individual planning. And then when they come back together, oh, and by the way, every hour, it's a 2-day event, and every hour they come back together in a scrum of scrums to talk about what they're doing and then go back out again. It's really cool. Agenda is available on Scaled Agile Framework if you want the agenda. Also available by Blue Jazz. Talk to you about that in a minute. That's I work for Blue Agility. That's our product. Thought I'd slip that in there. And so there's your trial for Blue Jazz if you want to try it. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's leave that for later. Here, this is what I want to show you. So check it out. This is what one of the teams does in a breakout. So we're in our program planning. It's 2 days long. All the programmable stuff is done. What is our program vision for this increment? Right, the vision of the 10-week increment, and what our program objectives. So we do the whole thing at the top level. The architect speaks about architecture things coming up. Okay, the runway, and then we break out. So this is just one team now. Each team does this. They go, okay, sprint 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4. What do you think that 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5 represents? What is the 1 point part? Yeah, say it louder. It's the program increment that belongs to. So next increment, it'll be what? Right, so you can tell what increment. This is the first increment for this team, okay? And then the dot 1 is a 2-week sprint within the increment, okay? And then you can see they have all their stickies on there, their stories they're working on, because remember at this level they're doing stories. But notice the features. So notice that feature 4, when is feature 4 going to be delivered? In sprint 1.3. But if we broke feature 4 into stories, are all the stories also in 1.3? Not necessarily. So we might have stories for feature 4 in sprint 1.1, sprint 1.2, and sprint 1.3. You get that? So the features are delivered. We mark which sprint they'll be completed in, but the stories that they decomposed into can happen in any one of those there or prior. Okay? The 5th sprint is always called an IP sprint. It's a sprint where we do the planning. The 2-day planning event happens in IP for the next one. And also we do hardening if you need it. You're not supposed to, but sometimes it happens. Maybe you ran over a little bit. You also are supposed to do hackathons and stuff like that. So there's a whole. It's basically that decompression time at the end of the intense period to catch up, improve, inspect, adapt, and plan for the next increment built into the thing. Notice that we keep our PI objectives here so that we can better craft our own individual sprint objectives. We put our wrists down. There's some color coding, etc. Okay? So you get the idea of what happens during the release planning. A whole bunch of people get together, the teams break out and come up with their own pieces of the puzzle. We see when our features, so there's your feature to sprint map. And then let's say that we know that there's going to be, at sprint 1.3, we also have a release. Then we know that features 2, 1, 3, and 4 are all going to make it into that release. And there's your release plan to features. Yes? So all that would need to do that is to put a symbol on here for a release. You know that little box symbol? Just put that box symbol right on 1.3 as well, and now you know. And that would be the last piece of the puzzle. Yeah? This is all stories. No, you're going too far up now, right? The release train is given an epic, right? The program team breaks that into features, and the teams break those into stories.
Okay, so you may start your first sprint with just with an epic that
Right. Imagine this. We're on this team together, and all they gave us was feet 1, 3, and 4. We need 1 and 3, and we're hoping to get 1 and 3 in sprint 1.2 and 4 in 1.3. And we, okay, let's decompose features 1, 3, and 4 into their stories, and let's allocate the stories out and see if we agree that this can be done. And then during the hour increment, we can say, well, we broke down feature 1 so far only. Definitely we can get that one done. Right now we're in the middle of breaking down feature 3. And then we go back and continue, because every hour the Scrum of Scrums meets to say what's going on, and then we go back and keep going.
Typically at the release planning level, what kind of information do they need about a feature to prioritize?
It's pretty similar to that, to what we use for stories, but they use that weighted shortest job first idea as well. So they do value, and there's a 1 to 10 scale. Me, I like to use a Fibonacci scale more, but they use a value scale on the features. They have a complexity for the features as well. And then they use weighted shortest job first to pick the order that those features should be attacked in. Okay? Yeah. I can just.
So at a feature level, we don't have enough information on those 2 days to be able to decompose the story. What do you do then?
So he's saying that we sometimes don't have enough information to decompose a story. So if we go back to the program team, all these roles, they are also in the room together. So you're supposed to be able to go right to them and say, we can't decompose this feature. You're here physically with us. Here's what we're confused about. So you're supposed to have all the program roles as well to allow you to do exactly that. So that's the risk mitigator that they use.
But I guess 2 days is too short.
2 days is too short for the next 10 days, for the next 10 weeks. Okay, make it longer. That's what I would do. Remember, you have a whole 2-week IP sprint. Make yours longer. A lot of companies are making it happen in 2 weeks. So consider that a challenge to see if you can get there. But in the beginning, say, hey, if we can't do it, let's make it a 4-day IP. And if at some point we can get it down to 2, well, then we're in line. And if not, then we'll feed back to Scaled Agile Framework that it's not 2 days. Right? It's great. Make it longer. But don't forget that some teams are doing it. So shadow them, I don't know. But I agree with you. So it can definitely seem too short. Okay, where are we at in time? 12 minutes left. All right, portfolio level. So we talked a lot about this already, okay? The big thing here, though, is we want a centralized strategy and decentralized execution. This first bullet is the heart and soul to me of what they're trying to accomplish here. Centralizing strategy means we'll decide at the top level what the value streams and what the trains are. And we'll actually even allocate budgets to them. So if we have $1 million in IT budget, how much does Word get? How much does Excel get? Right? And that determines the team size they can support. So from their budget, they can determine their team size. Their team size will determine how many projects they can pull, how many epics they can pull off the thing. Okay? So if we want more Word, and that can change at any given time. Quarter by quarter, we might say, this quarter we're going to bump up the budget for Word and take it away from Excel. And so we might allocate a whole team out of the Excel and put them on the Word train. Okay? And now we can do more Word projects for the next quarter. And it's just all about pulling the epics off. So centralizing strategy is deciding what the budget is, allocating it out, doing the Kanbans over there. But what the decentralized execution says, we want the epic trains, we want the arts to pull the epics themselves. So they decide when they can do stuff. Also, we don't put all of the epics from the portfolio level. We maybe put 20% from the portfolio level. 80% come from self-organization. So Excel, Train, can create epics themselves and then put them on their own backlog and pull them as well. So we trust them to build as much Excel greatness as we can. However, there will be portfolio level Excel requirements that need to be done, projects that need to be built, that we will also put on there. And so the Excel Train is going to be using some portfolio level epics and some program level epics. And this idea has confused my clients like crazy. There are epics at the portfolio level and there are epics at the program level. And so they think that means that there's a different definition. No, they're all projects. It's just where it came from. A portfolio epic comes from a portfolio initiative. A program epic came from our train. But they're all epics that got to get done. Okay?
Can you give an example?
Yeah, the whole move to the whole move to the iPhone. That was probably a portfolio epic, right? But the Excel train notices that there's a feature. The Microsoft what am I thinking of? Outlook. Outlook notices that when you look at your deleted mailbox, there is no way to see things by deleted date, but you can do that in Lotus. And people are complaining, hey, why can't I do that in Lotus, but I can't do that in Outlook? This is true, by the way. And so they create an epic to solve that problem. Didn't come from the portfolio level, right? It came from their understanding of their own product. And that's where the centralized strategy, the portfolio level epics, but decentralized execution. Let them pull when they want to and create their own program level epics. Okay? Yeah? They work together with the portfolio team. So you see the program portfolio management up there? That includes the RTEs and the product owners from the program level. So they all work together to prioritize that list. The release managers, they absolutely can be in. It would make sense because they're deciding when to release stuff, so it would make a lot of sense to have them in there, yes. So no matter what it says when you click on the button, you know that if you don't have that person in the room, we're going to pick the wrong stuff. They should be in the room, right? But that's your guidance right there. Everything else here, I think we kind of talked about. Strategic themes. This comes from your business drivers. Okay, and so strategic themes create projects, and those become the portfolio level projects. Strategy from the business, from the overall giant business within which this all fits. Okay, so I think we kind of talked about the portfolio level a lot earlier. So I came up with a little 10-step how to start. Me, I like actionable worlds, a world where you can just go and do stuff. So I made you my personal 10-step list, and you guys can try it out and tell me if it's good or bad or whatever. But number one, you need to figure out who your portfolio and program team is going to be. Again, go to the Scaled Agile Framework, click on the picture to see who they normally are, pick your own. But it's the people who can decide what we should be working on, okay? Understand your business strategy, your enterprise business drivers, and the business unit budgets. So this is all the business-y level stuff, okay? That's number two. And again, all these clickable. Number three, what are your strategic themes? So now we're getting into the safe instance. Your strategic themes are how you tie to the business outside of the safe instance that you're working inside of. And I'll show you a picture of that in a second. So number four, identify your value streams. What are your product lines? Number five, identify your trains, the dedicated teams of 50 to 125 people. Number six, identify your release train engineers who are going to be leading each of those trains if you have more than one. Okay? You may only have one train, one RTE is all you need then. Okay? It's okay to have only one train. It's fine. Create your initial backlog of epics. Think my initial backlog of projects. All you do is take your current project backlog and call it epics, and then don't worry about resourcing and dates anymore. It's going to be a pull thing now. Identify your other program level roles from the diagram, your DevOps, your system team, the architectural runway people, right, all that. Identify your art teams and team members, so how many teams are going to be on each train, and who are the members of those teams. And finally, start pulling your epics. From the backlog, woot woot, you're on your way. All right, so here's my 10-step how to get started. One other thing is that you can actually have more than one safe instance. So you have a group of 10 people, you might become one safe instance, but someone else in the organization might have a different safe instance. But all of them tie into one business strategy. So here is the business that you operate under, and they have a strategy of where they want to be, what do they want to do. That strategy is decomposed into what are called enterprise business drivers and business unit budgets. So that's all outside of your safe instance. Then you tie yourself to the outside business using those strategic themes. So this is our top level for a safe instance, but there is a level above outside of your safe instance. And so that's why when I looked at these steps, I had to put in those steps 1, 2, and 3 to acknowledge that relationship there. I probably should switch those slides. In fact, I will switch those slides. I want to tell you that before I give you the 3 steps that tie to this idea that was kind of clumsy, so we'll fix that. Inspect and adapt, right? All right. It's the first time I've used these slides, by the way. I hope you're liking them. Okay, so we're almost out of time. I want to do something kind of interesting, and it's this. Look how much you've learned. I'm going to recap for you what we just went through in what I think is a fun visual way. So first of all, you learned about the levels. What are the levels? Okay. Program, portfolio, and team. What else is on there? They threw a train on there, which is at the program level. By the way, that confuses people. The trains are at the portfolio level, but each program is one train. And so that's why that train symbol is here. Okay? So keep that in mind. What about the backlogs? What kind of backlogs are there? Portfolio backlog, which has what on it? Epics. Okay? What else? What other backlogs are there? The program backlog, which has features. And finally, team backlogs, stories. Okay? There you go. And the Kanbans that feed the portfolio backlog. Okay? There's also budgets and strategic themes up top to help us figure all that out. And down here, there's a vision and a release backlog to help us figure out that backlog. Okay? What about the people? At the bottom level, who do we have? Roles. 3 roles at the bottom level. Product owner, Scrum Master, and team. Program level, 3 major roles. RTE, product management team, and the system team. Okay? And then all the other ones as well. So here are the people. You've talked about every one of those groups of people so far. Then there's iterations. What do we know about the iterations? What do we know about the iterations themselves? 2 weeks by default. And then we also learned that there's 5 per what? Per program increment. Okay. When do the system team at the program level, when do they do demos? Every 2 weeks or every 10 weeks? Yeah, I got different answers on that one. It's every 2 weeks. They do a demo every 2 weeks also. Their demo is, we took all the team stuff, unified it into a single demo of the most exciting stuff, here's that demo, to prove that we're integrating the teams together at the program level. Okay? What's that? Every team does a demo every 2 weeks, and this program team is no exception. So don't forget that there aren't 4 teams, there's 5, and all these sub-teams do a demo, but the 5th team has to do a demo as well, and that demo is some amalgamation of how they've unified these things together into a program thing, okay? But their demo might be targeted towards, look how much of the feature we've created. No, the teams down here demo to their product owner, whereas at the program level, you're demoing to product management and probably release management, okay? Furthermore, you're demoing feature-oriented, right? Whereas down here, the demos will be story-oriented, okay? Yes. Yep, and that might adjust the backlogs all the way down to the bottom again. And so let's see. So down here, those are the team iterations, and up top, the program iterations match. And all the teams are on the same cadence. Okay, and then we learned about organizing around value. In other words, value streams, right? And so you learn about the value streams and the trains that can be allocated to a value stream, and the epics that those trains are picking up, right? And then you get back to the big picture. Boom. So I told you in the beginning that my goal was for you to be able to look at this diagram and feel like you understood every little piece of it, and that you can click on any one of them if you go to the actual Scaled Agile website and get more details. So how do you feel about the picture now? I am stunned. It's complex, I get that, but I'm stunned that they were able to put every nuance onto a single slide. That's the thing that has me sold on the model, that they could put that much information and yet make it that elegant. I think that's really cool. Finally, I have some next steps for you. Number one, by all means, if you're interested, go to the scaledagileFramework.com and click on any one of those icons and learn more. Also, my company has a product called Blue Jazz. In our version, we have videos and we have a Watson front end. We have a process engine in the middle, and we actually overlay step-by-step on your products if they're web-based, like if you have Raleigh or a Rational Team Concert or version 1, how to use the tool to achieve the process step. So for example, if you say, how do I put my Agile release train into version 1? You actually ask it using Watson. It says, well, here are the 5 steps, like a step-by-step list like I showed you. But then it'll say, do you want me to show you that in your version of Watson? I'm sorry, your version of version 1. and then your version of version 1 comes up and it says, click here to create an epic, right? Or a train or whatever. Click here to enter the name, and the help text pops up right over top of any web-based tool. So in the end, we tie the process steps to the actual instance of your tool so that new people can write a new story for the first time, can write an epic for the first time, a feature for the first time, or whatever it is that you do in that tool. And it works for any tool that has a web front end. We have the safe process already documented, but if you have your own methodology that you want people following our tool, you can teach it your methodology with the Watson front end and the tool overlay, and now people can just kind of help themselves. So if you want to see our safe version of that, we have a small trial version on there, and you can click around and play with that at that link. And this link here that I've given you is for Blue Jazz with a safe corpus. This corpus is adjustable inside, but this is about safe. So become a safe agile leader. This is what your leadership would want to do. Get your trains going, leverage the community. There's a whole community of people doing safe. You can ask for help from them. This comes right from the SAFE website. They want you to do your SAFE implementation. They have their SPCs, they call them, certified consultants in certified process program consultants. And then they have the trains themselves that you're launching and learning, and then you start doing it. They talk about Scaled Agile here. Partners, this is us, Blue Agility, we're one of many, and the Scaled Agile Academy over here. So that's the source of where you get that stuff, etc. So I think that's it. Some references. I think we covered some references already, but more references because everyone wants more, and we're done. I think that's my time. Yeah, I'm 2 minutes over. I don't think it's on the site yet, but it's everything on here can be distributed. So yeah, I'll figure out how to get it up there.
Yeah,
Or you can get my card and I'll email it to you.
yeah, checking out to thepathtoagility.com, and as you get presentations submitted, they will go up on the site, and including a videotape session.
Awesome. So this is on video. All the things we said, all my stumbles and mumbles. But yeah, and if you want my card, come up and get it. And if you have any further questions, I'll stick around.
Again, I encourage everybody, fill out your online surveys. You can do one for every different speaker using the same survey, so please give us that feedback.
If you think I should come back again, it's important that you do those surveys. If you think I shouldn't come back again, it's also important that you do those surveys.